global government is probably just over a horizon. It's been in the process for a long time. We can go back to Tower of Babel, but in more recent years, it's been on overdrive. I've done many programs on it. I'm very, very concerned about it. I've played clips of President George H.W. Bush talking about the fact that a new world order is on its way. It'll be led by the United Nations, and we need to say a word about the United Nations before we end this program. Here, Eric Barger's in studio with me to quiz Gary. Gentlemen, I just want to go back for a few minutes to what we talked about in the early part of segment 1, and that would be the spiritual dimension that's at play here. It's heavily an evil spiritual dimension. We have the lawlessness happening that is predicted in the Bible, Matthew 24 particularly. We have the spirit of Antichrist on the loose. What else are we seeing that is all of it kind of launched out of the pit of hell?
I think we could add into the mix a strong belief by many of the people on the far left in Eastern mysticism and the New Age. If you really get down to the bottom line of what Eastern mysticism is all about, it really is declaring man God. Mm-hmm. When you study pantheism, it teaches that all living things, plants, animals, and human beings, the sum total of all living matter is God. And so humans are part of this God force according to their thinking. And in their thinking, this liberates mankind to feel free to do whatever comes naturally to them. So sin is not a big issue. In fact, right and wrong altogether can be debated rather than looking at the Bible and determining from that and knowing what is right and wrong. Right and wrong becomes skewed. And in anything a person wants to do bad enough, it becomes more acceptable for them to do it. And so this has opened up Pandora's box, if you will, in the U.S. And if you were to stand there on the streets with a microphone like Jesse Waters mm-hmm. and ask people what they really believe theologically, I think people would be shocked how many of these people, I'd say over 50% of them, are pretty hardcore into Eastern mysticism and New Age and occult and witchcraft and that type of thing. And so they, of course, they loved Hillary Clinton because she was in their camp, theologically speaking. Trump has been less predictable. They don't know where he's coming from except that he wants to put America first and he's opposed to global government. He's made that very clear. And so they're not on the same page together, and so this is like the end of the world to them.
I was just going to say that pretty amazing. We see New Age philosophies all around us, yet we have the people on the streets. The first thing they would probably say to a Jesse Waters is, oh, now, I really don't want to tell anybody what to believe, and I don't want to encroach upon anybody else's sovereignty as a person, so I really don't want to get into that. That's the first thing we would hear out of these people because they really are afraid to come down with an opinion if they're talking to the world. However, amongst themselves, they know exactly the direction they're going to go.
Gary, when we talked the other day, you and I talked about a few factions I think we should mention here. We talked about some of the heads of universities and how they're indoctrinating students today. We talked a little bit about the NEA because it's in the global worldview camp. Christianity is the core of the problem. God is the problem to these people on the far left. But these people on the far left are atheists. They don't know they are preparing the way for the Antichrist. They don't know they're engaging in things that are spiritual on an evil side, but they don't understand this, do they?
Well, some of them are atheists, but many of them are Eastern mystics. Mm-hmm. And this is something I think that's been overlooked by conservative Christians. They don't realize how entrenched Eastern mystics are, both at the United Nations and other global institutions. And that's something I saw through my government job back in the 80s, and it completely caught me off guard. I was amazed at how many people I met within our State Department that were subscribing increasingly to Eastern thinking and worldviews. I sat in on a meeting in Washington, one of about 300 people, where a guy, a luncheon speaker, highly decorated by the United Nations, called for an end to the Christian ethic in America and a move toward the religious beliefs of the East if we were going to succeed in the future, and he got a standing ovation afterwards. I witnessed this with my own eyes. This was, like I said, back in the 80s. And so this push toward a new world order has been going on for a long time, and I think some of these people didn't want to show their hands openly because most of the people of the world weren't ready to receive it. But on your university campuses, I mean, you can go back to the early 1900s. As soon as the Rockefeller Rockefeller and Carnegie foundations and Ford foundations got going, they began to pour money into various teacher colleges like Columbia that graduated many of the people who today are your university presidents and principals of high schools and so forth. There are a few Eastern universities who've received heavy funding from the Rockefellers and their allies over the years, and also they've influenced the textbook industry, the National Education Association, and so this has been going on for about 3 generations now, and it hasn't happened overnight, but since World War II especially, it's begun moving more quickly, and in the last 20 to 30 years now, it's really been coming out in the open because they feel more comfortable. There's security in numbers. They realize there's millions of them now, not just a few thousand, and so we are seeing this manifesting itself now publicly, and if you look at who the protesters are, how many of them have been college students, and of those college students, how many of them have been put up to it by their college professors, egging them on? I'd venture to say probably a majority of them. Some of them can't even tell you fully why they're out there protesting. They're just out there because they want to be rebellious and help create chaos, and they don't like Trump and the fact that he's more of a nationalist and wants to put U.S. interests first. They're globalists, and many of them have an Eastern worldview and regarding atheism and Eastern mysticism. The two have a lot in common. Both of them elevate man to the position of godhood. You know, if you're an atheist, that's your religion. You basically believe that man is God. And it's interesting in some of the former communist countries, what is very popular these days is self-hypnosis. It puts you into an altered state of consciousness, a trance, if you will. It's actually an occultic practice, but they don't know that. But they have these experiences that they cannot explain with beings that appear to them. Now, because they don't believe in a spiritual dimension, they don't believe that they are encountering spirit beings. They believe they're dealing with extraterrestrials because that's the only possible explanation they could accept, believing in evolution as they do. But really what they're experiencing is something demonic, spiritual. So even in atheistic circles, these people are dabbling with concepts of Eastern mysticism, perhaps without even knowing it. And so Satan has a lot of different ways in which to steer mankind in the direction he wants them to go in. He doesn't care what you believe in as long as you don't believe the truth, which is that Jesus Christ is the living Son of God, and it was his death on the cross alone that paid the penalty for our sins. Instead, he teaches the elevation of mankind, that the future is with mankind himself. That's the big satanic deception in all of this.
You're listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I'm Jan Markell. I have on the line Carey Codd. You can learn more at his website, GaryCodd.org, K-A-H. We're basing our interview, well, in part anyway, around his most recent newsletter that came out winter 2017. And you can access part of that, at least the primary article, at GaryCodd.org. You can subscribe there as well. And we're trying to unpack a little bit just what happened back on November 8th, at least from the perspective of the globalist mindset, because they were very much set off course, didn't expect what happened. And Carey Codd, Hillary Clinton was the ultimate globalist. The Clinton Global Initiative was the ultimate globalist endeavor. And so they can't quite get over what happened.
No, in fact, rumor is that she is considering running for the mayor of New York City. We'll have to see if that plays out or not. But the Clinton Global Initiative has been dealt a huge blow because of all the pandering that was going on and money being exchanged and favors being done. A lot of the internationalists that were helping to fund it have backed down, at least temporarily, because I think they don't want to be indicted on all this. They don't want to be viewed as having attempted to buy influence. And so the whole thing has fizzled. And I don't know if it's a permanent thing or just temporary, but they're reeling. They didn't see this coming. Again, they felt they had an entitlement for Hillary to be the next president. And, I just wish people could vote for the person who is best, whether they're man or woman, rather than making such a big to-do about trying to get the first woman president in. There are some people out there that would have voted Hillary if she was the devil himself, just to get a woman into the White House. We need to look at what people believe, what their past record has been politically, and what they're willing to do. And I think with Hillary, her track record was pretty clear. She's a staunch globalist, and I really think this election was decided along those lines. Donald Trump promoting nationalism versus Hillary Clinton being a globalist and really pushing a more socialistic New Age agenda. And, we all know Trump hasn't had the most moral background. In fact, I didn't start out supporting Trump. I would have liked to see other people. I really have been a big fan of Mike Huckabee and others. But I have to give the guy credit, first of all, for winning and then sticking to it since he's been in office, trying to do the things that he actually said he was going to do. Mm-hmm. And so we need to pray for this administration now that he wouldn't make any major mistakes and step into traps that globalists have set for him, and that he would have extreme wisdom, that his advisors around him, beginning with Mike Pence and Kellyanne Conway and others, that he would listen to them and sometimes take a deep breath and hold back if he's getting ready to do something rash, and that God would grant this administration favor and wisdom in order to give America some more time. That's my hope and prayer.